How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to JG's Lounge. We're here with another episode of Singed Eye Sockets, and we even have a special guest today. Before we get into that, let's introduce our co-host, Evolution. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's been a wonderful day, mostly. Just looking forward to it. I love these episodes and like the conversation and how the mind wanders when we get into this stuff. So, looking forward to it.
All right. Yeah, me too. I did a lot of research for this episode, and I'm actually proud of myself. I don't typically do as much reading as I did for this one.
I think I'm rubbing off on you.
Sean Shankman, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I've had a good calm weekend. Spent most of it grading papers, and sitting here looking at this quad. It looks like the worst Brady Bunch episode ever. But
definitely
Brady Bunch episode.
That's right. That's correct. Nice diversity here. We got a good group, and I'm at, like you said, like we all know, this is a perception podcast, so I'm curious where things go with the conversation throughout this. Our special guest tonight, Richard Lillard. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about today's topic.
Yeah, and it's funny because I literally reached out to you like 3 days ago, and I'm like, hey, and I felt like it was really late and maybe you'd be too busy, so I'm glad you're joining us tonight.
I'm honored.
So do you want to kind of give everybody a quick, brief rundown of who you are, what you do?
Sure. So my first name is Richard Lillard. It's one name, not two. If I were Richard, I'd be a. With that, so Richard Lillard is the full name, and I am known as the gentleman psychic. I'm a psychic and a medium. I used to be a psychic and a small, but I gained some weight. I used to do stand-up, and then I found to make more money on my back, but that's neither here nor there. Unlike other psychic mediums that are all doom and gloom or love and light, I am a happy medium. I am here in New Orleans. I am a world traveler. I am most known for my appearances on Ghost Adventures and a few other television shows.
Right. Yeah. And I actually, and Sean's going to be very intrigued by a lot of this too. But I actually found you on TikTok from one of the Jubilee skits, and that's kind of how I reached out to you because I liked kind of your views and your stances, and I wanted to get to know who you are. And I'd like to say that I made a good acquaintance out of it. And we keep in touch occasionally here and there. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you joined in, and if anybody gets a chance, check out his profiles. You have an immaculate house, a lot of vintage kind of. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. What would you say it is?
Well, it's mostly sort of my version of the late 19th century. So it's not everyone's aesthetic, but it is fairly accurate to the late 19th century. It has some different flourishes. Of course, the home that I actually reside would never have been as grand as what it appears now, but that's perfectly fine. It's the late 19th century in my mind.
I wish it was the 19th century still.
I'm glad it's not, actually. I'm really glad.
I'm sorry. I have a question for Richard Lillard. So you obviously have kind of this aesthetic going on. So when you buy things for your house, first of all, do you one, abhor repros for one, and for two, when you make selections for your decor, and this is kind of an offshoot, like away from what the subject matter is tonight, but I'm fascinated by what you got going on there. Do you only purchase things that give you a vibe more than they give you an aesthetic feel for your home?
No, I don't think so. As far as reproductions, I'm not a big fan of them. There are plenty of actual antiques that are breathtaking. That said, if there is a reproduction and it's good quality, then I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with things that are not of quality. So, and here's the deal too. There are a lot of inexpensive 19th century items that are they were junk in the 19th century and they're junk in the 21st century. So I do. I'm very specific and particular in my aesthetic.
Okay. Well, my parents dealt in antiques for years, and I know that when you find certain objects, they have a certain vibe to them.
Well, there are some energies. I do have some rather, shall we say, spirited items.
Mhm.
I have some rather spirited little marionettes from the 30s.
Oh.
I have one that he's in my guest room, and he's probably 4 feet tall and wears a top hat and is very pale. And so people who have stayed the night, if they actually stay the night, they oftentimes say, I don't like the way that he was looking at me. I was hearing a tapping. There was this green light. And I say, just ignore him. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Now, that said, I do have some vintage 19th century mourning jewelry, mourning wreaths. So it's wound with human hair. I do have things that were used in funerals. I have things that were used in churches and synagogues. So there are a certain amount of spiritual things that happen here.
Okay.
How do you search for them? I don't think I asked for that on the first show.
How do I search for them? Well, you know what? I'm a little bit of a recluse, I have to admit, and I don't particularly like going to. I like a flea market; they're fun, but thrift stores are pretty much junk these days, so I don't do that. Once in a while, I might go to the flea market, but lately I find things on Facebook Marketplace, and I find them on. I find friends of mine have certain macabre, dark companies, and they specialize in Victoriana. So I do that, and then of course there are all of the classics: eBay, Tidbits, some of the other ones that are a little bit more.
And Evolution, I'd like to give you a second if you have any questions for him. But I did have. Is there one thing that you possess that you like have most meaning to, or has most meaning for you?
Well, goodness, there are so many things that I truly love. I think the one thing that it's not this chair. It's actually, there's a throne chair in my front room, which is Black Forest, 18th century. And it is, it's tall. It actually came to me in a roundabout way, but it was in Los Angeles. And then I bought it from Orange County. And the story goes that back in the 1920s, German antiques were not expensive. There was World War I, castles were raided and destroyed, and antiques were shipped in mass to the United States, and they were not expensive. They were doing anything to survive. So this one ended up in one of the crazy movie star homes of the 1920s, Spanish Revival. And so the star that lived there, she died. And then about 10 years later, after her death, in 1963, this family moved into the home. Everything was removed with the exception of this chair that was in the cellar. And this young boy who grew up to be an adult, this young boy loved this chair. It went with him through 2 marriages. It went with him everywhere he went. And then as an older gentleman, he moved in with his daughter in Orange County. And she hated the chair. She hated it. She hated it. She hated it. And so I bought it. I drove down from Pasadena down to Orange County, and I put it in my convertible, and I drove back. And the man was so upset. "You're going to make a lot of money. My daughter hates this chair." I said, "I'm not going to sell the chair. I love the chair." But that's how it came about. But there is a slight more reason as to why it's special, particularly to me. So the family moved in 1964. 1964, of course, being the year that the Addams Family came on television sitcom. They came on a show. It's my favorite thing in the world. Beyond that, I was doing theater in the Midwest. I was in a little town called Carthage, Missouri, at a little theater called Stone's Throw Theater. And I recall I was going on stage. I think we were doing Lost in Yonkers. It was the play Lost in Yonkers. And instead of thinking about my next line or thinking about the next scene or whatever it was, my little 15-year-old mind was just abuzz. And this image of me in the future, wearing a suit with a mustache, sitting in that chair popped in my head. And because I was living in the Midwest, and because, not to date me too much, but it was the 90s. And I remember I was like, oh no, I can't do that. That's people will think I'm gay. So I don't want that. So maybe, oh, you know what? It's the 90s. So men wear grunge and they wear beanies and they wear flannels. Yes, that.
Yeah.
And then I heard the voice of my friend. She played in the show with me. She is my longest friendship I've had, Brandy. And I heard her very distinct cadence in my head. And she says to me, well, I liked the first one better, but I just want you to be happy. But I really like the first one. And I turn around and she is looking at me and she's smiling, this knowing, sweet smile. And I went, oh, she hears me. Oh, crap, she hears me. Oh, la, 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 brick wall, brick wall, brick wall, brick wall, brick wall. Fast forward all these years. I get the chair. It sits in my seance room. I call my friend Brandy and I said, Brandy, I wanted to show you my chair. She says, well, I told you I liked the first one better. And I said, on that topic, by the way, she's a witch. I said, on that topic, Brandy, remember when we did Lost in Yonkers? And I know I heard you in my head. She said, well, I love you and I wanted you to be happy, but also you think really loudly. So that chair is probably my favorite thing, but there's a lot of favorite things.
That's a hell of a story
Yeah.
behind that chair. Evolution, do you have any questions before we get into this?
I noticed that you're really liking the 1900s and the look of the 1900s. Is there a reason that the 1900s draws you?
No, not really. Like I stated at the beginning, I'm so glad that we're not in the 1800s. We're not in the 18th century. We're not in the 19th century. We're not in the 30s. We're not in the 60s. I am so grateful that for all of the worst parts of the past, I'm so glad they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Race relations are better. We couldn't be having this conversation right now, even 50 years ago. I called my mother every single day for 20 years via FaceTime. I could not have done that. I would have had to write letters back and forth. And no, medicines are better. People are living longer. The standard of life is better now than it would have been all those years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the aesthetic goes, I like the good parts. I like the fact that people actually took the time to and care in their homes and in their everything was art. Everything was aesthetic. Their clothing was aesthetic. The rooms were aesthetic. For better or worse, I love the artistry of it. Also, I love the Addams Family, and and there is a reason why. But that was because my parents were older. Long story short, my parents were older. They went to the older doctors, and I ended up by reading the New Yorker magazines. What is there for a 7-year-old to read in a doctor's office? New Yorker magazine, and it was all of the Charles Addams cartoons, and I was so intrigued. And then when I was in high school in 1991, they were gearing up for the film The Addams Family that premiered that year. And they started showing on Nick at Night, or was it TV Land? I don't remember. But they were showing all of the old episodes, and I fell in love with them. What I loved was that this fictional family sort of got me. They understood my darker aesthetic. They understood that it was okay to be different. They understood that it was okay to welcome people into your home as long as they're kind and good to you. It doesn't matter who you are. You know, they oftentimes talk about their alternative practices. They talk about their friend in Haiti who's the witch doctor, and they talk about they talk about the neighbors. Well, welcome them in, sir. Have them for tea. Welcome in the mailman. You come into my home. It's fine. It wasn't that they were dumb; they were accepting. If you accepted them, they were fine with you, and that was what I always wanted.
Nice.
You told me about that in the first episode, and it really got to me because this is like, you don't. As a kid, whenever I saw the Addams Family, like I thought it was kooky and funny, but I never looked at it from that aspect. And then if you go back and rewatch it, even like the newer ones that they did, it's still the same vibe from the family.
It's just love and acceptance, and not being bothered by what people outside of the gates think of you.
Right.
You'll welcome them.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into tonight's show. You guys ready for this?
Ready.
Yes,
All right,
I have one more question.
Bring it on, Sean. Let's go.
Well, it's a two-part question. One, you're located down in Nolens, right?
New Orleans, yes.
Okay. Next question. Do you or do you not like garlic?
Well, I do not like garlic, and I know what you're trying to get at. Garlic actually bothers my stomach. I don't like it, but I'm not a vampire, regardless of what people may think. The funny thing about garlic is that originally the vampires were akin to what you would think of as zombies. They were reanimated corpses. And so when the Goths, the Gothic cathedrals, they would put gargoyles on the edges of these buildings because it took something ugly to drive away something more vile, something more evil. And it was the same thing with garlic, is that the garlic was actually meant, garlic stinks. So if garlic stinks, then the vampires don't want bad breath because they already stink. And so it takes something vile to drive something even more vile away. And that's some vampires that I do know actually like garlic. Because
ginger, at one point, gingers were actually recognized as vampires.
Because they don't have souls, right?
Well, I mean, the pale skin, we burn real easy. I mean, it's just, I don't remember where I read it. And I'm sure you might know. I mean, it's some time in history, but there is an area in which at one point they thought gingers were vampires.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Me neither.
I am never surprised by, if I may, human stupidity. Stupidity and prejudice. I will go there.
I feel like
I love the. Oh, go ahead, Ginger.
No, you're good, Sean. Go ahead.
No. I just said, you said take something vile to drive something more vile away, and I was just thinking my ex-wife would be the ultimate vampire repellent.
All right, let's get the intro out of the way here. All right.
Okay.
Hello, Reagan. I'm a friend of your mother's. I'd like to help you.
You want to loosen the straps, huh?
I'm afraid you might hurt yourself, Reagan.
I'm not Reagan.
I see. Well, then, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Damien Karras.
And I'm the devil. Now kindly undo these straps.
If you're the devil, why not make the straps disappear?
That's much too vulgar a display of power, Karras.
Where's Reagan?
In here with us.
The Exorcist. I think a lot of people have seen it. People who aren't even really into horror know of The Exorcist, I feel like. Has everybody in here seen the film?
Yes.
No.
I have.
You have not seen the film.
No.
Really?
I know about it, but
Yeah.
I actually have the book that came out just before the film over
Yes.
there. But no, I've never seen that. I know
Yeah.
about it, but I've never seen it.
I've heard the
Yeah.
book is vastly harder to deal with than the actual movie is.
I didn't read that
Yes.
either. I didn't read.
But yes, it is actually. It's not. So Hollywood made it a girl. In reality, it was actually a boy.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things about the film that are kind of backwards, and it's actually kind of the amount. There's quite a bit of a difference in stuff that they left out of the film that did happen to him. So there is that. It is based off of this book, Possessed by Thomas B. Allen, which is probably the one that you're talking about, Richard Lale. Is it?
It could be. I don't know. It could be. The one that I have is an old copy from like 1969, 1970. I don't know. I just looked at it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I just put it on the bookshelf.
So Thomas Allen became fascinated about the story that we're about to get into because recently before that, a diary from one of the father bishops who was taking notes from every day that they were doing Exorcist, and it was meant to be discreet and kept away from the public, but it was found in an old room in an old hospital where they conducted some of the exorcisms years later and became known to the public, which is how the film and everything became to light. Anybody got any questions so far or comments or anything?
The little girl that played in that movie did an exceptional job. I mean, that was like some serious acting. I think that movie had such an impact on everybody that saw it because of how the visuals were.
Right.
I mean, that was a great work as far as putting it into a movie, and the results, around that little girl and how she handled those scenes was just incredible.
I actually agree with that. And another thing is like the Satanic Panic was actually towards the end around that time when they released this film. It was December 26, 1973 when the film was released. The budget for the film was $12 million. They made $441 million off of that film.
Jeez.
I mean, people wanted to see it. People are intrigued by this kind of stuff, whether they want to admit it or not. I feel like a lot of people, I think at some point believe in it, even if they say they don't. Like if you can walk into a dark room and kind of have that back of your mind kind of fear, like could there be something in here with me? Then at some point you do at least acknowledge that there's the possibility for this kind of stuff. Would you guys agree with that?
I think it does. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I think that it still affects people today. I use the Ouija board. I do seances, and in the 19th century, it was people used it to come together for date night. It was not anything evil or dark. It was, let's see if anyone's around. It was really kind of silly. By the 1930s, it was losing favor. By the 1940s, it had a little uptick, and then by the 1950s, it was silly, and it was a toy, and it was only for crackpots. But by the time you get through the Vietnam War, and then you have this film specifically that comes out, and Reagan contacts Pazuzu via the Ouija board, suddenly now Ouija boards are evil and scary. And I tell people, no, any form of spirit communication is it interacting with the neurons and the electrons in the air? Maybe. Is it your motor neurons? Maybe. But it's not about that. If there's a spirit, they can use any of your energies to speak if they wanted to. So if your intentions are evil, then you're going to get evil results. But if not, any form of communication is communication.
Right.
But I say that because even when I do seances now, I bring out my Ouija board. I always start with that at first, and I say light as a feather, and I help them move the planchette around to make certain that they know how it feels, and then I move my hands back. Sometimes people are into it and they allow the transfer of energy to spell out words. And more than on one occasion, I've had people go, light, you have to be light. Like, okay, clearly it's not going to work. You think it's evil. Let's just put that away. And it really is traced back to this 1973 film.
It's funny because I was going to mention the Ouija because it's actually part of this. In 1880s, after the Civil War, it was extremely popular in the U.S. for people trying to reach out to their loved ones that had passed during the war. And it was common. It was commonly used. There was no evil behind it at the time.
Not at all.
The occult was massive back, mostly in the day. We use that term. In mediums and seances. I mean, the highest levels of society were doing those things, and that's where you started to, unfortunately, because and my stance on this, guy, is like all of this shit's absolutely real, like without question. I just with the ghost hunts and stuff that I've done, the shit that I've seen, like it's real. Okay.
Right.
But unfortunately, the legit folks that were doing these things were overshadowed by the hucksters who would, use the cheesecloth as like, the ectoplasm, and they would have the tables that had all the gears and tricks and all that shit that, they would, oh, your sister's telling you to send me more money. It's the today version of, my uncle died when he's leaving you $500 million, like that kind of shit. And it's just very unfortunate that, things got twisted, and then, this movie hits, and, the satanic panic, and that carried over into the 80s too. Cause if you guys remember, with Dungeons and Dragons and rock and roll, I mean, Jesus criminally, you had Dee Snider of all people in front of Congress testifying that, the rock and roll music is not, that's not where the evil lives. Okay. It's in here. It's in us. It's, it's, as Richard Lillard says, it's the intention of the soul and the heart that puts the evil into it.
Mm-hmm. And if you have like any like sort of Christian background or knowledge of the Christian background, and in the Bible it says on several occasions not to contact spirits, or you should be stoned to death.
Which is also funny. I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's also kind of funny because when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was seen speaking with Moses and Abraham, who would have been dead at that point over 1,000 years.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that Jesus, when he drove this, and I thought this was very interesting with, when Reagan said, "We're all in here," because that brings to mind Legion, right? And when he put the spirits into the herd of swine, and then they toppled into the sea, which I heard a really cool take on that the other day. And I think it's through some movie that came out, was talking about where the evil in the world is coming from in the end times. And it's like, we've only explored 5% of the ocean. Where did Jesus drive into the ocean, right? So the spirits just went, and that's why all this evil shit is in the ocean, Bermuda Triangle, all these things. And it's like, okay, that's aggregating a bunch of different stories, but at the same time, it's kind of a cool theory, I thought.
I like it. I can deal with it. Yeah. Though I would argue that Jesus might be the evil one, but we don't need to talk about that.
That would actually,
I find that very interesting in context of this.
That would be a good episode, and I actually would like to do that, like from an open stance on everybody, just kind of discussing and breaking it down. Actually, that's a great idea to do something like that in the future.
I'm down.
But with that being said, Evolution, you're being kind of quiet. You got anything before I move on?
No, I'm just bringing it all in. I'm paying attention and focusing on.
He writes down notes and he like brings it up randomly throughout
that's
the
right.
show.
He's reading with the notes. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm just keeping track of everything and processing.
So this is Roland Doe. His real name is Ronald Edwin Hunkler. He was born in 1935 to a German Lutheran family and Maryland, Cottage City, Maryland. he's 13 when stuff starts happening to him. I just wanted to show a picture real quick for you guys. So when Roland's 13, him and his grandma are hanging out in their house January 15th, 1949, and they start hearing dripping noises coming from the attic. The parents and them, they're all searching for the drips. They can't hear it. Around 7 o'clock, the drips start turning into a scratching noise, and they follow the scratching noise into the grandmother's room, specifically underneath her bed. And the dad's like, okay, maybe we've got like some sort of infestation. I'll call the exterminator tomorrow. And the noise continues till about midnight and then just stops. The next day they have an exterminator come out. He finds no sign of anything. He even rips up the floor underneath the grandmother's bed and puts down poison and leaves. Over the next 11 days, this continues from 7 p.m. till about midnight. The scratching noises underneath the floorboards. And then on the 26th, the scratching noises start appearing in Roland's room. Now, Roland, go ahead.
7 p.m. to midnight.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes.
Okay.
This is several. So when I research, I'll let you continue. When I research, I'll listen to podcasts. I'll research articles online, and I usually won't listen to ones that are kind of one-sided or anything. I'll kind of just throw that out. So I pick from different sources, but they all say the same thing.
Well, okay. So the reason I bring this up, and maybe with Richard Loyal's experience from your side of the thing, maybe you could speak on this with your knowledge. But, time is a construct, right? I mean, supposedly it's just man-made and doesn't this, yada, yada. I don't agree with that. But it's strange to me, the specificity of time when you say specifically 7 to midnight, because that gives me pause, because I know, like, from my own world of experiences, there was a time when my sister was a teenager and I think I just turned 13. There was a period of a week that, and we had some bad juju. We lived out in the country, back in the woods behind our house. Everybody that ever stayed at our house knew, like, there was just something. And for some reason, she had these double doors, that would slide, one way or the other for her closet. And one night at midnight on the dot, they started banging like this, right? And it would continue, and it would do that for like 3 hours. First night it happened, freaked her out. Second night, she knew I was heavily into like studying the occult and all those things. So she asked me to sleep on her floor. And, I knew that like any type of experiment, when it comes to stuff like this, you had to take out all the, external factors. So I plugged up all the drafts, covered the window, put a towel under so there were no drafts in the room whatsoever. Cause I told her, I said, these are light doors. That could be what's going on. Right. And I brought our Great Dane Alpha in with us. And guys, I shit you not, right at midnight on the spot, the doors, boom. But like, I'm even getting the goosey bumps, right? Talking about it, just bang, 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 over and over. And the thing was, Alpha, when it started, she started growling. And then after a few seconds, she just, how they do the thing with her head and they turn it like that. Yeah. And it happened for a week. It was a week, and it never happened again the entire time we were in the house. Wow. So I have no explanation for that. But the thing that sticks out to me is just the timing aspect, because it was right on the damn dot. So, so I don't know if, Richard Lillard, from your experience of occult things and whatnot, I'm not really, I know 3 a.m. is like the witching hour, but then when it comes to time specifics or whatever, I'm not really versed in it.
There's a lot of folklore about time and timing. One of my favorite things is what is in a lot of mystical folklore, Jewish folklore. It's called the 13th hour, and where the clock will strike 12 once in a blue moon, it strikes that 13th hour. It's this sort of liminal space that doesn't really exist in this time and space. as far as midnight goes, yes, a lot of churches were open until midnight. You'd have midnight mass, and that would be the end of it. So that does play into a little bit of it there. You have at 7 o'clock, of course, 7 is supposed to be the holy sacred number. You also have at 7 o'clock, you get it's that twilight. So the sun is just at the horizon, typically around that time of year, depending upon where you are in the hemisphere. So there's a lot of sort of metaphorical reasons why it may happen. That's what I would just say on that.
Okay. Yeah, anything else to add to that, Sean?
No, I don't. It's a curiosity to me because with it being so specific, you know how I am on these things. It's like those kind of things jump out at me, and I know there are these grander details and things that happen, but it's like the little stuff like that make me go, wait, hold on a second, because but I know what I've lived through, so that even changes that aspect for me.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes, I completely agree with that. When I lived in Hollywood, I had a little tiny studio apartment. It was right across from Hollywood Forever. And every morning at 1:57, it was not 2 o'clock, at 1:57, the tumblers on my doorknob would turn on the closet door, and then 30 seconds later, it would creak open. Every single night. And then my neighbor happened to have been murdered. Long story short, he was shot in the face by a jilted girlfriend on the 4th of July. And before knowing that he was dead, I saw him standing by my closet, and I went, that's so weird. Like that, what is this portal? And then one evening I was lying in bed. I heard the tumblers fall, and I went, okay, here we go. And I heard footsteps. It walked right over to the corner of my bed, and then it gave me a good shake. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I have been nice. I've been kind. Now, whatever you are, you have to go away. When you start affecting my personal space more than just opening the closet doors, I don't want to deal with this.
Right.
The funny thing was, the next day, a friend of mine who was incredibly sensitive to spirits and things, they come in and they say, wow, it feels so different in here. It feels nice. I mean, it looks the same. I don't know what you did differently, but it feels different. And I went, oh, well, I told my closet ghost to walk away.
That's simple. That's simple. Hey,
Yeah.
you are invading my personal space. Gotta go. You just have to go.
Excuse me for just about 5 seconds. I just have to grab a glass of water. 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
Go right ahead. Yeah. It's interesting that we talk about time though, because with 3 a.m. being the witching hour, like in biblical, in the books and stuff, Jesus was actually pronounced dead on the cross at 3 p.m., which is why 3 a.m. kind of became this lore of the witching hour,
right?
Practices
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when they stabbed him in the side and realized there was no more blood, and he was gone. That's when they pronounced him dead on the cross. Was at 3 p.m.
Right. Have you guys seen the movie Constantine?
Yeah,
love that movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic, right? I thought the fact that and I know Hitler and the way they tied in like Hitler and his whole trying to track down the occult stuff, which is another episode. All right, let's get into, because good Lord, that is so much depth there. But the fact that they use the Spear of Destiny as the focal point for that, because not a lot of people, that is outside of their like scope of vision, because so many other things are attached to the crucifixion that's almost a smaller part of it. So the fact that they leaned into that so heavily, I thought was pretty cool as far as the plot goes.
While you stepped away, Richard Lillard, I was talking about the witching hour and how, like, in history and the Christian belief is that Jesus was pronounced dead on the cross at 3 p.m.
Mhm.
which is kind of how that lore of the 3 a.m. kind of became to exist. Is that correct?
It is partially correct, but also churches oftentimes close. They have mass at midnight, and then the doors shutter at 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you commit a sin, I'm not Catholic, but if you commit a sin at 3:01 a.m., then you are out of luck, because now you can't go to confession. You can't go and light a candle. You can't have someone pray for you, because now
Right.
you have to wait until 6 or 7 a.m.
Mhm. Right. And it's even funnier in the Catholic church. Being baptized is actually considered a form of exorcism, because you're expelling the demons and you're renouncing them. That's the theory. I mean, I didn't grow up Catholic, but that's what I know of it. But let's continue. So on January 26th, this is 11 days after the scratches start, they move into Roland's bedroom. Well, Roland screams for his mother because the scratching now turns to what sounds like squeaking shoes pacing up and down his bed. So his mom and his grandma come in and they sit on his bed, and his mom wants to communicate with whatever it is. Now, recently, his Aunt Harriet, who he was closest to, passed in late 1948. She had passed, and not long before that, she had visited from St. Louis, and her and Roland were playing with a Ouija board. His aunt is a spiritualist. Spiritualists don't believe that there are negative ghosts. It's just kind of ghosts kind of help you, or spirits help you communicate and kind of determine your futures, stuff along that. I mean, can you maybe touch a little bit more on that, Richard Lillard?
Well, I mean, that is true. The spiritualist movement was about connecting with gods and with deities and with spirits and with energies, but they believed that it was not innately evil. Nothing was innately evil. It was basically your intention. As far as the squeaking shoes walking around the bed, I have heard that same thing in this very house.
Really? All right. See, and that's creepy to me. Like, if I was to hear that next to my bed, that would actually scare me.
I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
I normally don't get frightened, but there was a time I almost called the cops on a ghost, because I kept hearing running down the hallway. And I'd sit up and it would stop. It was right after I moved in. I'd lie down. Okay, fine. It's fine. It's fine. It would stop. And then it would run again. I'd sit up. Nothing. And I did this like 3 or 4 times. So I walked over and I mustered all the nerve that I could, and I flung the door open and looked out in the darkness, and I took my phone and I looked under everything, and I turned on lights as I went all the way through to the front door, and I looked out the mail slot. There was nobody. And I turned on the porch light. There was nobody. And then I looked out, and all of the houses around were asleep. And I was like, okay, fine. Okay. But I've heard it on several occasions, and a few times I've had to sleep with a nightlight. Normally I don't, but I was like, okay, tonight I think I'm going to give you a little ghost light. You can sort of.
Right. Yeah, no, I would probably do the same thing. I don't think I would scream and run or anything, but I would definitely be a little bit more aware of my surroundings.
A friend of mine stayed here. My friend of mine stayed here for a few days while I was away I was doing another gig in California, and he came down for 1 year ago almost. He came down for the Vampire Ball. And I said, well, you could just stay at my house. It's fine. And I said, I'm so sorry about the neighbors. I know they can be really loud. I'm sorry about. He says, no. The neighbors were fine. It was the people upstairs that really drove me crazy. And I went, it's a 1-story.
Right?
There's nobody up there. Also,
That's
the
great.
Axeman of New Orleans, his last killing was just down the street, by the by.
From where you're staying at?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. See, there's just so many ways we can go with this show already. I feel like we got several episodes that we could do more of.
Right?
I'd love to have you
This
back
is
on, Richard
part
Lillard.
1. Part 1.
So after the squeaking noises, so his mom and grandmother come in. They sit on the bed, and his mom decides, hey, maybe we should try to reach out and see if this is Harriet. And so she asks, is this, whoever is here, is this Harriet? Knock 3 times. Now all 3 of them do report. This is hearsay based on the 3 of them. That's because they're the only ones in the room. They felt a rush of wind come down and then a bold 3 knocks on the floor. Just to kind of confirm it, she asked once more time if this is Harriet, knock 4 times, and there is a bold 4 knocks on the floor. After this, the scratching stops, but then it continues, but not from the floorboard, but inside of the mattress. They all report feeling claws inside the mattress, scratching almost like it's trying to get out.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point, they decide they want to take Roland to see a psychiatrist and the podiatrist and meet with the Lutheran minister. The psychiatrist and the podiatrist say that, yeah, he's a bit high strung, but he's, other than that, he seems like a normal 13-year-old kid. Go ahead, Sean.
Did you say podiatrist?
Whatever a kid's pediatrician. That's what I said.
Okay. All right.
Well, if obviously it was a podiatrist because they're scratching in the bed, right?
Yes.
So obviously, it's
I'm actually seeing a podiatrist because I got my bunion removed. So there is that. Okay, that's why I got the 2 confused. Okay?
I'm so sorry. Just see this foot doctor going, yep, them's devils in your foot.
Got some cornhole going on here, but he'd be okay. Thank you
That's
for correcting me.
That's a hell in your foot.
Thank you for correcting me. Okay, it was.
It's not a correction.
Well, it is because I don't think they went to see a podiatrist.
There was
anyways,
a weird flex for parents back in the 60s, but yeah, okay.
Basically, both, and actually, the psychiatrist in the 40s, it was still kind of a new concept, anyways. But they did say, he's a bit high strung, but besides that, we've got nothing. So they go to their Lutheran minister, Luther Schultz. I have a picture of him right here. Yeah, he's a Lutheran named Luther Schultz. Interesting name. I don't know.
Looks like a friendly sort.
I don't know. The eyes are a bit creepy. So Luther Schultz decides he wants to meet, they kind of tell him what's going on, and he says, I'm going to come to your house. So he comes to the house, he does a blessing on everything, and they put Roland to bed about 11 o'clock that evening, and the scratching starts. Luther witnesses the bed at this point starting to shake. There's a very light shake, but it's a noticeable shaking. Mm-hmm. So he's just kind of being a skeptic. He's like, how about we get him out of this atmosphere? You guys come stay the night at my house and we'll see what happens. So his mom and him go and stay the night at Schultz's house, and they stay in his room. He's got 2 twin beds, and the mom stays in the guest bedroom. That night, around midnight, the twin bed that Roland's sitting on, it starts shaking violently. So Luther Schultz decides, hey, why don't you go sit on that chair in the corner of the room? So Roland goes over there, brings his knees up to his chest, and Luther describes him as almost going in a trance-like state when the chair starts shaking and then tips over. Now, again, he goes, okay, well, let's try one more thing. How about you lay on the ground? And he gives him a couple blankets and a pillow. He has him lay on the ground. And within a few minutes, the blankets slowly start sliding with Roland on it underneath the twin bed. And what Luther says is that in his trance-like state, Roland is not moving. He starts to bounce up and down into the springs below the bed. He pulls Roland out and he says, okay, we need to take you to a Catholic priest. We need to go somewhere because this is more than something that I can handle. At this point, I would like to talk to Richard Lillard and get your views on this because, with the church and everything, and I know your views on all of this is a bit different. So I'm curious what you have to say so far.
I think I have 2 schools of thought. Number one, in the 40s and 50s, the psychology was not what it needed to be. And there was a lot of blame it on the devil, blame it on the devil, blame it on the devil, blame it on the communists, blame it on the devil. there was also the other thought. The other thought is, if there is an ancient spirit that predates Christianity, and you start screaming at it to come out in the name of Jesus, it's probably not going to listen. Number two. Number three, when I was a celebrity impersonator, I would walk up behind someone and I would get inches from their face, just inches outside of their periphery. And when they would see me, they would scream. The ones that would say, "Oh, hi, Willy Wonka," I would not torment or tease. The ones that would go, "Ah!" I would do it time and time and time and time and time again. And in principle, if I were spending time hanging out in the closet and then someone starts asking me to knock on the door, I'm going to mess with them. If you start showing reaction to it, I'm going to mess with you more.
Mhm.
And I think that if there is any kind of spiritual entity that was attached to this young man, it was being teased and tormented by someone who, A, didn't really believe what he was talking about, number one. Because whether you're Lutheran or Baptist or Catholic, it doesn't matter, as long as your intentions and your power and your thought and your focus is, if you have the truth, then there needs to be no one else. I don't need to send you over to a voodoo priest or a Catholic priest, or I don't need to do that, because I already know.
Mhm.
That's
And it does actually say, while I was reading into this, about in the Vatican, every priest actually has a book that does. The Catholic priests do have a book that does talk about in several chapters about how to handle exorcisms. And it even says that it has to be a mature priest, mature father that is more about, not about, it's more about how he carries himself, not about what his knowledge is. Which I think it kind of relates to what you're saying, in the sense that you know what you know. Speak on that. Don't try to mess with something that you don't understand.
Hey, Jukebox. I really want to comment on Richard Lillard just said, because it made me remember a conversation that we had on a previous episode
Mm-hmm.
with Sean Shank, and we were talking about the things that we experienced personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Sean was talking about something cloudy. Do you remember that episode?
Something that happened to you.
Well, there are lots of shit that happened to me.
No. When I think you seen something cloudy, and then later on, you're like, well, when you seen, you're like, it's too much for me. I'm gonna go back to bed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We were
yeah.
down in the mountains
Yeah.
of, that one. Do you want me to tell the story, or?
No. I just want to.
Okay.
And then later, you said your wife mentioned that she seen the same thing, but it
Mhm.
was later that you didn't talk about it or nothing.
Nope.
But and I mentioned that I had a experience where I seen like a dark image, and I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna entertain that. I'm just gonna leave it alone,
Yeah.
and nothing happened. But I'm saying that because Richard Lale just mentioned uh, about the spirits, and if you I guess if you um, interfere with them in some type of way, or you react in some type of way, then that's when you get a response.
It's a similar thing to the animal kingdom.
Mhm.
Now, large times, what happens when dogs do attack is because the person it starts flailing or screaming, and it triggers that animalistic nature of, okay, I don't know what this is, and it scares me and I bite it.
Mm.
As opposed to, if you can stand firm, you still may get bitten, but chances are it's not going to be as bad as it would have been if you're screaming and flailing about.
Right.
I can 100% concur with that, because I can tell you of, in all the ghost hunts and things that I have been a part of, and things that I've seen with teams of people, people freaking out, you know, I go the opposite way. I'll walk towards this stuff, and you know, I'm the the fuck you did, you know, kind of attitude with that stuff. It's not arrogance. It's just, you know, it's like, well, you're on our plane, and you know, I mean, you know, let's do this thing. But it is. It's very. I mean, I think that's very accurate. It's just very much like the animal kingdom, you know, and they go after where the energy's at.
So at this point, Schultz sends him home after, you know, doing some prayers on him. The mom does and him do both report that he was thrashing during the prayers, not very happy about him. And over the next several days, things get a little bit worse for Roland, even at school. He's still going to school, and even some of his classmates and teachers report him being sitting at his desk, and the desk starts shaking violently, papers in the classroom flying off random desks, and even scratches start appearing on him in forms of almost what look like letters. So they get in touch with this gentleman right here. He is a local Catholic preacher. He is 29 years old. This is Father Edward Hughes. And Schultz kind of goes over what he witnessed, and Schultz or Hughes says, okay, you know, bring him here. Let us meet him. And Hughes's first impression of Roland when he enters his office is that the room gets very cold, and that there's just kind of a very negative energy coming off of Roland. He also discusses that this is, according to his wording, is that when Roland approaches him, he says, "O priest of Christ, you know I'm the devil. Why do you keep bothering me?" And he says it in Latin.
Wow.
Yes. So that's the very first encounter he has with Roland. And at this point, he, based on the information that Schultz gave him, Hughes decides to reach out to the local archdiocese and says, "You know, I think that we are in the verge of an exorcism, you know, of a need of an exorcism, because in an exorcism, there's actually 4 different stages." Are you familiar with this, Richard Lale?
I'm not Catholic, so probably not. I was raised,
I didn't know.
raised
Maybe
in
you
a
just kind of
household.
knew the. Yeah, we've talked about that.
A
Yeah,
little bit. I do know a little bit. But I will tell you, it was a good thing that he did pay the priest, because otherwise he would have been repossessed.
God. All right. Good night, everybody.
Heck of a show, guys.
Oh,
Have a good evening.
oh my God.
Well, here, okay, I have a couple questions before we
go
move
ahead.
on. A couple
That was
questions, and here, and this is coming from me as I am a staunch believer. Okay, but I'm also skeptical about things, because first of all, like the Latin thing, you know, it's like, oh, he said in Latin, so of course it must be true. But this is back in the 1940s, right?
Right.
Okay, so they were still teaching Latin in school curriculum, if I'm not mistaken. So that's not too far out of the realm of possibility that the kid would know Latin, for one. For two, the fact that he's straight up coming out saying, "I am the devil," like the devil, not Azrael, or, you know, I don't know, whatever.
Beelzebub has another devil set aside for me.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? It's just like it's like I'm swinging for the. Now it could be, okay, I'm not saying that it's not, but doesn't it seem a bit suspect that it's, you know, top tier? It's the number one guy.
Title. Devil is not. Devil is a title.
Right.
It's not the. You know, Hasatan means the Satan.
Yeah.
Devils are devils. There's a difference.
Yeah,
Like,
it doesn't.
yeah,
It does not a specific
yeah,
entity. It's just just a basic term.
So, but do you see what I mean? Like, you start stacking that stuff up, and it's like,
I agree. And that's why, I wanted to bring it on here, because I think that from the perception of it, can it be scientifically, disproven or whatever. So there are 4 stages of exorcism, and I did find the information on. The first would be infestation. This is the haunted house type stuff, footsteps, poltergeist, voices, apparitions, not more bugging the family, not necessarily attached to anything in particular. The second is oppression. Activity steps up with physical attacks. Sleep. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just counting. I'm
Okay.
just trying to see where I am in the stage of possession.
Oh,
Just
okay.
So
Oppression is activity steps up with physical attacks, sleep disturbances, including regular nightmares, frequent severe illnesses, major depression and anxiety, severe financial or employment problems. Basically, you almost kind of start to feel sick or drained, or just not your normal self. Third is obsession. As the name implies, at this stage, the afflicted person has a hard time functioning, being constantly preoccupied with thoughts of the demonic activity commanding his or her life, and frequently with thoughts of suicide as well. Sleep becomes nearly impossible. Now, the fourth one is possession. Contrary to popular belief, possession is not demons entering a person's body and taking over his or her soul. A person's free will is never removed, only severely compromised. In the possession, a person is so physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually broken down by going through the other 3 stages that demonic spirits are able to seize occasional control over that person's actions. I wanted to bring those in here because I thought that was very interesting.
You know what I thought was very interesting about that? Go back to number 2 real quick.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I'm hearing what we're talking about and all that. Did it say something about finances?
Yeah. Severe financial or employment problems and relationship problems.
Holy crap. Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. That I mean, of all the things that we've been talking about and what the subject,
show me the money.
Right. I mean, is it interesting to everybody else that's in there as well?
It caught my eye.
It's about money, so it doesn't surprise me.
Right. Yeah.
And then also, when you think about even sort of the televangelist, they're seen as wealthy and rich, and if God loves you, you are going to be financially blessed.
Right.
Prosperity preachers.
Well, and see, I grew up Pentecostal, and I remember my parents devoutly sending 10% of their paychecks to the church, sometimes more, and we're struggling, and even on more than that, we're jumping around churches. So it's like, where's this? Why? You're investing in something that you're not even sticking with. And usually we're jumping around churches because the pastors say something that we don't agree with. Like, for example, one of my cousins turned 18, decided they were gay. Well, that's not okay. So we should probably switch up churches after they spent 2 weeks trying to convince her she wasn't gay and she was still gay. So they decided to switch up churches to find one that was okay with that. And I mean, that's just, if you're going to have faith in something, you better commit to it. At least commit to it. I have a lot more respect for somebody who could come to me and have a strong conversation about their religious beliefs than somebody who goes, well, I didn't like his views on that because it affected me, so I went somewhere else. I think it says a lot. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in a lot of religions, in my opinion, especially what I came from. And I'm sure, Richard Lillard, being Pentecostal, you could probably relate to a lot of that too. Oh yeah. If you're not speaking in tongues, then you're not doing it right. You need more help.
The donation bin.
I have okay. So when I was trying to be indoctrinated into the Southern Baptist world, when I was living in Tulsa, my ex-wife took me to her sister Tori's church, and they were heavy, like speaking in tongues and the raising the hands in the air. And I told my ex, I'm like, I am not into this, because I said it is BS. I said it's all a competition with them. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, watch when the preacher starts getting going, right? And so he started getting going, and one lady's hand went up, and I said, "Now watch." I said, "Somebody's going to put 2 hands up because one
Wow.
hand up isn't enough."
Yeah.
And I shit you not, as soon as I said that, a lady on the other side of the aisle, both hands. All right. And I said, "Now watch. Somebody's going to start waving around, like they're at a hip hop concert." And I said, and then it's going to escalate, and somebody's going to be in tongues, and it happened that way. And I was like, this is human psychology. This isn't religion,
Mm.
right? It's a competition.
And sometimes spirits can, whether they're negative, whether they're demons, whether they're angels, sometimes that human motion, that is a lot of BS. Sometimes that psychology, sometimes it does break through. Sometimes that is the stronghold that energies need. Sometimes it's the person and not actually the devil.
Yeah, right. So the archdiocese gives Hughes permission. And again, this is a younger priest, and he decides to admit him to a local Catholic church hospital, so that he has some like nuns and some other support when he's doing the exorcism. During the exorcism, while he puts a pendant on the pillow, and he starts doing the holy water and reciting the scriptures, and Roland gets out of his restraints. He removes one of his hands from the restraint, grabs a spring from underneath the bed, rips it out, and jabs it into Hughes' shoulder, going all the way down to his wrist, to which he has to stop the exorcism running out of the room. He ends up having to get 140 stitches, and his arm is never fully recovered.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
if you remember what I said earlier about exorcisms, it should only be conducted by somebody who is mature and is more in the right mind. And clearly, maybe that could have been a part of it. Now, that's assuming that you're under, the understanding that that's how it's supposed to go. But then things get worse over the next few weeks. The scratching becomes more violent. He starts levitating, scratching, and words start forming on him. Almost words, not quite to the point where they can make out what they're saying. And it continues for, let's see here. Sorry, I'm kind of talking faster than I'm reading here. Okay, yes. One night, a few days later, Roland's chest gets scratches that spell out the word Louis. Now, recently, his parents were discussing moving to St. Louis, where they have family and relatives, and this just kind of confirms, hey, maybe we should pack up and move to St. Louis. Maybe there's some sort of connection here. So they move in with his dad's brother and Belnor, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. What you got, Sean?
Why the fuck would you go to the place where the devil just GPS'd you to? You just put a fucking pin in it, and you're like, "Yeah, we'll go to that place."
I was thinking it, but you said it.
It's kind of also a funny thing too that the devil would want you to go to St. Louis, which is named after the Catholic French king who became a saint, Louis. By the way,
Yes.
Couldn't even write the word saint. Yeah, there you go.
You would think that the devil would have wanted you to go to some place like Saint Anne or something. If you're going to a saint anyway, you might as well go to Saint Anne.
It's somewhere tropical.
So they move in March of 1949. The family moves to St. Louis, and stays with his uncle. And his cousins live there as well. And his cousin is going to a Catholic school there in St. Louis. And after witnessing some of the things that have been happening, she approaches one of her teachers, Professor Father Raymond Bishop, which I have a picture of him as well. Let's see here. I thought throwing pictures in there would bring a little bit more, I don't know, interest to it. So that's him. Seems like a pretty straightforward guy.
Looks awesome.
So Bishop, let's see here, visits the home that night. Actually, he agrees to come and meet with him.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
So this priest was told there is a young boy of 13, and the priest says, "I'm there.
Let's go. We'll get this guy."
The catechism spinning.
That's good.
That was great. Oh man.
So Father Raymond Bishop decides to go to the house, and he also brings one of his colleagues, Father William Bowdern, Bowdern. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced. We're just gonna say Bowdern, but it's probably Bowdern. We're just gonna, go with it. So they go to the house.
Bowdern boy, you better Bowdern.
So when Roland goes to bed, they stand and watch him for about an hour, and nothing happens. Now, as soon as they leave the room, Roland starts to scream. There's thumping and banging. So they re-enter the room and witness him sitting in the middle of the bed. The bed is shaking violently. They start sprinkling holy water, and it stops. So then they leave the room again, and immediately after, it starts shaking violently again. And they enter the room, and at this point, Roland is screaming so loud, he rips open his pajamas and starts seeing fresh claw marks from the inside out, scratching and creating blood claw marks on his chest. Let's see here. So then they both, William Bowdern and Father Raymond Bishop, both decide this kid is not quite in a possession state, but he's definitely got the signs of, what needs to be exorcised. What you got? You got anything so far?
Well,
anyone?
I mean, you've got claw marks from the inside out.
Yes.
You've got shaking beds. You've got levitations. I think he might be at the early stages of possession.
Oh, that's exactly what I was about to say. Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know what other proof that they need. I mean,
Right.
like the aliens coming from the inside out with the claws, that would yeah.
And,
Okay.
and according to Bowdern and Bishop, that the possession would have to be that the demon has fully taken control, and in points where he is creating violent words and stuff like that. But earlier on, like he did talk to one of the former pastors in Latin. So yeah, I mean, you would think he's already at the full point of possession. Well, so they reach out to the archdiocese, and at this point they go to Washington D.C. to it's called the Alexion Brothers Hospital. It's a more confidential hospital. It is also like a Catholic school, and they decide to start performing an exorcism on him there.
You know why they exorcise the demons?
Why?
Because they don't want fat, sloppy demons when they're doing their hauntings. You have to jazzercise those things so they fit nicer in those little bodies.
So on March 16th, he is admitted to this hospital, and Bowdern had already expressed to the archdiocese that he did not want to do it, but of the options that they had, he was the only one that could, based on what we've already discussed. So he does prepare for it. He fasts and does his prayers and whatever before conducting this first exorcism on March 16th. Now, when Roland goes to bed, for about the first 2 hours, Bowdern is praying, and Roland's tossing and screaming, the bed's shaking. Every time Bowdern would say the word Lord or God, new scratches would appear on him. Bowdern then addresses the demon, demanding it to tell him his name, and the letters H-E-L-L appear across his chest. Huh. Bowdern asks again when the demon plans to leave, and the letters G-O appear on his stomach, along with the letter X on one of his legs. Now, the Roman numeral X is 10. So Bowden assumes that it's 10 days, which is correct as this continues over the next 9 days until Roland's going to bed, or Roland goes to bed. They are there doing exorcisms every night for the next 9 days. On the 10th day, when they're doing the exorcism, there is thrashing and the bed does shake, but Roland seems to be in a trance state and not doing anything, not really reacting. And they decide at the end of it, maybe he's gone, but we don't know. It's the 10th day. So they do send him home as an experiment to see if everything's fine. And for the next 4 days, nothing happens. Roland seems to be just a normal boy. And then on that following Thursday, which is 4 days after, Roland starts to feel sick, and he tells his mom and his dad, "Hey, I don't feel good." They're like, "We'll go lay down." And he demands that they all follow him upstairs. The witnesses, his family, said that as soon as he sat on the bed, his eyes slammed shut and he started writing on his bed with his finger. And then a voice that was not Roland's said, where is it? I got it in here. I'm talking faster than I'm going. It says, "I will stay 10 days, but return in 4. If you stay and become Catholic, it will stay away. You may not believe me, and Roland will suffer forever." And this is a voice that comes from Roland while he's in this trance-like state. What do we got so far?
How convenient. Be a Catholic. Money to the archdiocese. Let this 13-year-old boy around these old priests.
Well, it's kind of like where you can kind of coax somebody into the belief of things happening. So, just being in the surrounding of what's going on in these exorcists, the boy's absorbing this information too. It's not, he could, if he is under let's say he has a mental psychosis, this could be kind of, I don't know what fueling the flames.
Well, it would be, you would be, you're basically telling the child what to say. You're telling him, this is the only church. This is the only way out. This is the only way out. Mm-hmm. And after 10 days of what amounts to absolute torture, regardless of whether it was a demon in there or not, it's 10 days of torture in a boy's body. And when people are under any amount of duress, they do all manner of strange things.
Right. What do you guys got?
You go, Sean.
Sounds to me like they need to get a good conjure woman from down south to take care of it.
Is that what you want, Evolution?
Well, I'm just from start of this story to now. This, of course, gradually gets worse, but it's traveling around the country with this boy. So, what way would you be able to visually have some scratching from the inside, and words showing up on you?
Yeah, dude, that's the one that I'm hanging up on too, because everything else. I'm a little bit on the opposite end of that. I do believe in those things, but I, at the same time, think that sometimes when there is a certain amount of pressure that is applied to the body, and certain times you can scratch yourself and then get really angry, and that extra blood pressure is going to cause that welt that was initially there to be increased. That's my thought on it too. I just think it's if I can quote the Dusk Till Dawn, "I don't care how crazy a motherfucker is, they don't explode when sun hits them."
Okay. So, and for me, I basically what I said, just kind of back up what I said. I think that to this point, there's a lot of things that could fuel the fire to make it worse, especially if he maybe has ADHD or some sort of maybe he's not very well known in school or liked. He's the only child, and the only people he relied on was his family. He was really close to his aunt. She passed away. So now he's just almost sort of in this depressed state, and so like, it's almost like they're piecing together their own assumptions of what's going on. He messed with the Ouija board, so maybe that's what it was. Now he allowed this thing in. I do think that in a sense, messing with a Ouija board, and Richard Lillard, I'd like for you to kind of talk about this if you don't mind. If you're in the wrong mindset, can you invite a negative? Is it possible to do that?
I think so, but it's not just about the Ouija board. It's not anything can be abused. Medicines can heal. Medicines can make you an addict and take everything that you've worked for.
Mm-hmm.
Can even take your life if they're abused. Can anything be an open letter to the devil? Yes, I think so. But anyone who would be wanting to play with the spirits in any form, I would say, first of all, there are rules to go by. You don't just open your house and say, hey, everybody, come into my house. You over there with the crack pipe, come on in. You don't do that because you're inviting these things that are negative. So you have, if you have a party at your house, you have a guest list. These are my friends. These are their friends. I trust these kind of people. These are the ones who are welcome in this world. And it's the same thing with the spirit board, is that sometimes people think it's a game and they're messing about and they are opening doors that maybe they shouldn't open. There are innate psychics and they don't even know that they're psychic.
Yes, I can agree. I definitely agree with that, because I feel like there's, and even Sean, you mentioned, even seeing things like, I feel like at a point, if you can accept that it exists, then you're probably going to be more innate to kind of see it, and depending on how much and how intrigued you are, maybe the more you're going to witness it. But I mean, you hear people, mediums and stuff, who say that they never really asked for it; it just kind of became. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, so after the 4 days and it comes back, for the next 2 weeks they're doing the exorcisms. Roland is now having bloody lesions every night. The shakings become more violent. He is now starting to distort when he's thrashing in the bed, bending in unhuman-like positions, and he starts to look different. His stomach becomes distended, and he almost looks ill. He doesn't look like him. He starts not looking like himself. After 18 days, on the 18th day of this continuous from it coming back, Bowden decides that he's going to do the exorcism in English instead of Latin. When lucid, during the exorcism, there were bouts where Roland would be lucid and he would pray and hold a crucifix to himself. And when he was not lucid and when he was in the trance-like state, he would start spitting, he would masturbate, he'd piss on himself, start throwing out cursing words. The curse words directed towards the pastors. And when Bowden decides to address the demon directly, Roland arches to a point where his shoulders practically touch his ankles. Around 10:45 p.m., the room goes silent, and Roland starts to speak in a new voice, and says, "Satan, Satan, I am Saint Michael, and I command you, Satan, to leave the body in the name of Dominus," which Dominus means God in, I believe, Greek. Is that correct? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's Greek. I'll look into it later, but I know it means God in a certain language. Immediately now, Roland's body starts twisting wildly for several minutes, then stops, and Roland comes out of his trance and says he's gone. And from that day forward, he never had any more issues. and just randomly stopped after that. He did grow up, get married, have kids, became a rocket scientist, actually, and passed away in the 80s. So, what you guys got? What's your guys' views on this whole thing?
It's a lot to consider, to say the least. So the time frame from the very beginning to the very end, how long was that?
That was the end of March, so 2 months. It looks like it was about 2 months long.
2 months long, with a lot of stuff going on in between, moving from one place to another,
And the end of World War II, by the way, 1945. It was just a few years before.
So I'm just thinking, it's a lot to consider. When definitely nothing like this happens every day.
I mean, it does for me, but that's not.
Well, okay, I give you that. But to this extreme, I'm thinking this is a rare occurrence. Would you agree with that?
I would not, and the reason I say that because even in the Catholic Church, I mean, if we want to keep going back to religion and Christianity, Catholicism being so dominant as they like to think they are, they even have plenty of people who are like ordained to do exorcisms. They happen around the world, and a lot of them even today talk about how they've done thousands and thousands of them.
I think it still is a little bit bullshit. Pardon my language.
No, bring it on. Did you hear Sean this whole episode?
I think that as long as people think, as long as they give credit to this analogous devil, then they're going to get what they're asking for. I am not Pentecostal anymore, but I liked in the fact that there was the Pentecostalisms, that they would roll on the floor and they would have their exorcisms, they would do these things, and then it was sort of, even though it was pageantry, the pageantry seemed to heal these people of their afflictions. It was pageantry. Was it real? Who knows? Their emotions were real. Right. But I don't see very many people who don't believe in the devil getting possessed of a devil. And I also don't see people of different faiths who don't believe in, I don't necessarily see Hindus getting possessed of the devil.
Right.
Now, I do see them on occasion. You'll see where they will roll around in the temple, or there may be these things. Is it the devil? Maybe not.
Right.
I think the devil gets too much credit.
That's fair. Now, as far as evil entities, I mean, do you believe that they exist?
I believe it's complicated. I will say that humans, I wish I could say that humans are kind, but humans are not kind. Right. We do unspeakable things to animals in farms for our food. We do unspeakable things to animals, to cruel things to test makeup and shampoo. Humans are not kind, not by nature. Is there evil? Yes, because humans exist. I think, however, that by focusing on it and the dichotomy of this is good and this is evil and the twain shall never meet, I think it's unbalanced, and I think it causes more mental illness.
I can agree with that. What you got, Sean?
Well, I mean, to summarize so much of this into one succinct statement would be, you can't do it. I mean, is there good and evil? I do believe there's good and evil. I think it exists in all people. and we make choices every day to do good and to do evil. And sometimes, one wins over the other, and God willing, or whatever entity you subscribe to, we pick the good more than we do the evil. That's what would make the world a better place around us for all entities concerned. Do I think we understand everything? Absolutely not. There are quantum realms and all kinds of things that we can't even possibly begin to understand with the limited amount of knowledge that we have. I've heard people talk about cryptids and Bigfoot not even being actually an evolutionary missing link, and is actually a dimensional being, and that's why we can't see. Do you see what I mean? It's like, in that possibility, it's like, well, we don't know, right? I know the things I have seen over the years. I know the things that I've physically felt. I know, like when we did the ghost hunt on the administration building for the South Bend Civic Theater, that one of our guys got scratched, and he got to 3, right? I saw it happen. I know we did the Mishawaka Demon House. One of the girls that was with us ran outside because she got her guts twisted and she puked all over the sidewalk. And to the physical touch where she got her guts twisted, it was like hot, right? And it was red, different things, just different things. And, as far as what I think we should focus on believing in, is believing in whatever would benefit those around us. If you're a Satanist and you follow, I think, what is it that do as thou wilt? Is that correct?
I mean, that's
it's paraphrasing. I know
Aleister Crowley was not a Satanist. It was do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And then it goes on to say something about all of this under love. But, I don't subscribe to the Church of Satan or the Satanic Temple. I don't, that's another topic, but I do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, given something under love. I can't remember what it is.
Okay. And I think the individual takes that and does with it what they will, right? Just like there's a lot of I've read the Torah, I've read the Quran, I've read the Catechism. I mean, like I've studied other religions around the world. And I'm at best, I would be called a red letter Christian, because most of the Bible that I've seen, I kind of just take and go, nope, because it seems to be silly to me, just like the 2 daughters sleeping with their dad so they can continue the line of the family. It's just like, you know what? I'm just going to pay attention to the good parts where it talks about love and everything. Right. So I believe there's that side of things, but just like the yin and yang, we live in a universe where everything has an opposite, right? So if you have good, you have evil. It's balance, right? Now, as far as this particular subject goes, I'm kind of with Richard Lale on this one. There just seems, I think it's a mix. I think maybe something got in, right? Because of what this person was going through and allowed something in. But there's so much of it that just smacks of BS that even as much as I'm like, yeah, this stuff totally exists, I'm having problems with this story. And I was having problems from the jump.
Yeah. And actually, that's kind of where I was going to go is, going from somebody who is Pentecostal, I'd go to church and then I'd come home and get beat by my stepdad, very hypocritical. I was very outcast at school. And I remember the day that my mom decided to leave, and I remember how eye-opening it was that the world wasn't how I had lived it for 7 years, and I feel like that could have gone opposite. Now, I could have taken the abuse and gone with it and became that person. And I feel like in this case, he's very close to his aunt, who's a spiritualist. Then you got his family that's very religious. His mind already could have kind of been mixed up anyways. So during all of this, after his aunt passed away, her being the closest, and him using the Ouija board, he could have kind of brought to his own light that I could maybe become something else. He gets depressed. He starts thinking, okay, maybe there's something here messing with me, and he kind of runs with it. And it just kind of builds as these preachers and these pastors are coming into his life, and it's fueling his mental state. I think the clawing from the inside out could be exaggerated a lot. Could he have clawed himself and they just didn't see it? I think there's too many factors that could be disproven. But I do think that there could be, in a sense, an energy involved, but I don't think that it has to do with the fact that it was like any religious backing. I think that was just kind of the way it went because of the fact of who the family brought in.
Okay, so I got an idea. As everybody was talking, I've been taking my notes and whatnot. You remember that game that we played as kids? One person will whisper something in another person's ear.
Telephone.
And by the time, thank you. And by the time it got around to the other end of the circle, it was something totally different than what it was in the beginning. I mean, just total miscommunication. So what I'm thinking is they found these notes, read them, and maybe even in those exorcisms, what's being talked about is maybe what the boy was saying he was feeling on the inside. And as everything got lost in translation over the years, people started creating different type of views or thought processes or explanations, and it was perceived another way than what it was actually given. So what I'm thinking at this moment is, it was probably something that occurred, but not to the degree it was expressed later on. I just think the actual event that took place just got reconfigured and reconfigured and reconfigured to the point to where it came out in the movie in Hollywood like it did.
Right. 100%.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So do we all think that this was not a possession?
I don't know.
It's a fair answer.
I think
the clawing and the scratching and then turning into like the footprints, like you were discussing, like you've witnessed that. I think there could have been something around.
I was going to save it for another time to tell you, but I thought there is a succinct point that I do need to say. So my bed is French. My bed dates from about 1890. It came from a Parisian hotel. And I am not kidding. Several times I will go to sleep and my bed will do this. And at first it bothered me. I was like, what is happening here? And then I realized something. The bed is from an 1890s Parisian hotel. What do people do on beds in hotels?
So weird. So you're saying this entire possession was just residual energy,
residual sex happening.
Ghost sex.
That, you know what?
So they
That
needed a
changed my mind. That's what it was
sexorcism.
I think the kid was into some BDSM. That's what it was.
Oh man.
There is another point to that too. Even we brought up Aleister Crowley a little bit earlier on, and Aleister had a similar life. Aleister Crowley he loved his father. They were Protestants. He loved his father. His father was a minister. his mother had PTSD, postpartum depression even, and she was crazy. And she called him, "Oh, you're a little devil. Oh, you're the beast. Oh, you're Satan. Oh, you're evil." And then his father died. He was the only person that he loved. And so then mother kept calling him evil and crazy. And he was struggling with his own sexuality. Even at 9 and 10 years old, there were things that he didn't quite understand. He bragged that he had bedded his nanny, who was 18. He was 9.
Mm.
And then, of course, she gets turned out. The mother finds out, turns her out of the house. She gets killed by Jack the Ripper, beg your pardon. I mean, it's one thing after another. And then his wife in the 20s goes into a trance. She thinks she sees Set, the god Set, and he himself tries to recreate that. That's where he comes up with his Thelema, his religion of Thelema. So, like this Roland Doe, when you put a lot of these traumatic experiences on a child, it grows and it turns into something that is, it has a mind of its own.
Right. Yep. That's a good way to kind of express that. And it's true because like I said, when my mom decided to leave, I really thought every kid went home and got beat by their stepdad. I thought that was everybody's life. So when we got out of that, I mean, it was eye-opening how different it was. So it's very traumatic. It's an experience that you're like, I can't, why did you allow that to happen to me? Like there's resentments that come into play. There's all sorts of stuff. And then you see other kids that are like that. And it's like, there's these two paths. Like when it stops, do you absorb it and go with it? Or do you become, better because of it? And, I mean, you see it all the time. Serial killers with very corrupt childhoods, and it's just, and they develop their own ideas of how the world's supposed to be, and even sometimes create their own gods or their own whatever. And then cults come into play. I mean, it's nuts, and I think a lot of it is mental. A lot of it is mental.
But again, could not a spirit communicate to you in a song that was written 100 years ago? Or could a deity not communicate with you through the words of a friend or through your own thoughts? It's that weird space-time.
And as we start to wrap up, I mean, you conduct seances and you use the Ouija board, but what is is there a specific process that you have to follow in order for it to work?
Well, I think that we do need ritual. I think we need theater. I think we need art. I think we need a little bit of the dark lights, the candle, the incense, the ringing of the bells. I think we need ritual. Humans need ritual, because it's what binds us together as a group, as a whole. It doesn't have to be religious necessarily. Humans need ritual. Things have to be done and done with a purpose, and that ritual helps them to get in the mind space to open and accept.
That's a fantastic answer. Well, Sean and Evolution, do you have any questions for our guests today before we wrap this up? Or any more thoughts?
Richard Lillard is definitely interesting hearing your thoughts from your perspective, which made a lot of sense actually, especially on certain things. And kind of tied into something that I was able to expound on. So I'm glad you joined us today, and once again, nice to meet you. And just look forward to what the response is on this episode, man. I think I'm interested to see what the result number-wise will turn out to be.
Yeah. How about for you, Sean?
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Definitely, I would love to have you on one of my in Jukebox had made mention of this, having you possibly come on Blurred Lines
I'd be
or
delighted.
doing other. Thank you. That'd be great. Because we talk about this kind of stuff on Blurred Lines, but we get a bit deeper into. I don't know. We were pretty deep today with all your pages of notes, Jukebox.
I had a lot of notes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, you nailed it. But
There
no,
were
I think it's
too many names. I had to.
yeah, but I think it's been great. I think having all manner of perspectives on issues, sheds light on things, and it's just funny to me that of all of the singed eye sockets that we've been able to do, and I've enjoyed every one of them. This is like the first one where we're kind of stepping away, going, I think we all blame the victim.
Right. Richard Lill, I really appreciate you coming on, and of course we're going to stay in touch. I'd love to have you back on again, and I know it was short
Anytime.
notice, so but thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I will put your website in the description as well. If anybody wants to reach out, he
Gentlemen,
does have a
thank you.
website. Yep.
I'm really
Free.
easy to find.
All right. Hey, to everybody listening that's going to listen or watch the show later on, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you around.